Secret of the Andes by Anne Nolan Clark. We are on chapter 5. Amauta comes. After a week of being home again, Kusi had difficulty in making himself believe he had ever been outside Hidden Valley. He would sit in the meadow watching his flock to see that no harm came to them, and think over and over and over all that had happened lately. He would put the things in order carefully. The family coming to the valley below, the minstrel coming, walking the swinging bridge over the roaring rapids, climbing the ladder across the cliff face, crawling through the narrow dark tunnel, the jungle trail, the family at Kondar Kunka, the Inca baths, the salt pit, and all that he had seen and heard while he was there. He strung them along on a string of thinking, each happening a knot on the string, each knot a memory. He remembered so vividly. He remembered every movement, every color, every feeling, every sound. But it was a dream, remembered. It must not have happened. It could not have happened. It was a part of a world that never was. Kusi would come up from the depths of his dreaming to look around. He saw the mountains crowded close together to hide, to guard his valley. He saw the pointed snow peaks above the ragged clouds. He saw the snowfields, their white flatness sparkling with iridescent lights. He saw the clusters of stunted, misshapen trees and the sharp, outjutting boulders. He saw the stone corral and the grass-thatched roof of his shelter. He saw the moss-green ichu grass and the llamas grazing. This was reality. This was fact. This was the world he lived in. These were the things he could touch and smell. These were the things he could hear and see. These were the things that were real. Only in memory could he see the foaming rapids tossing their crystal spray. Only in memory could he smell the heavy, rich earth mold smell of the jungle trail. Only in memory could he hear the minstrel's songs and the pipes of Pan. Kusi sighed. More than anything, he missed the minstrel. It was so sadly silent. Now that he had gone, Chuto was quiet these days. He was kind. He was patient. He was always near to show and to help, but he talked so little. Did Chuto miss the world outside of Hidden Valley? Did he miss the minstrel's song? Kusi asked himself these questions, but only the whining of the timid Sunka and the humming of the llamas answered him. Soon it was shearing time. The boy was glad of the activity. He was glad for something to do. He was glad of the roughness and the toughness of the world each day and the tiredness of his body as he crawled to sleep each night. The two Indians worked from gray dawn to gray dusk. It takes two to shear a llama. Llamas resent being sheared. Chuto would throw, then hold a llama flat on its side. Kusi's work was to cut short, but not too short, the matted, coarse outside hair and the long, silky hair next to the llama's body. The boy used an old-fashioned shepherd's knife, and it was very dull. He had to stop often to whet it on nearby stones. Then he had to cut faster than ever, because Chuto could not hold down the llama for long. One side sheared, Kusi and Chuto would turn the llama over. Kusi would sharpen his knife and shear some more. Then another llama would be caught and thrown and sheared, and another, and another. Sometimes while he was shearing, Kusi would have time to look at the animal he was working on. He looked at it with affection and pride. Like all Indians of the Andes highlands, he loved the graceful beasts. They were his friends, his companions, and his burden bearers. They gave him his sandals, his cap, his poncho, and his blanket. They gave him his textile bags and his rawhide net bags, his rope and his slingshot. They gave him fuel for his fire and blood for his ancient sacrifice. They were a part of his past and his present, his everyday and his spiritual existence. Chudo pointed out the narrow two-toed feet, each toe having its separate pad, which enabled the animal to be sure-footed in climbing. They were created for us, Chudo told the wondering boy, created for Highland people. For 12,000 years they have served us. Kusi had a question. This time he was determined that he would ask it. Old one, he spoke hesitantly, Old one, tell me, how do you know so many things? Where did you learn these things that you tell me? Chuto answered simply, I was taught them. Kusi, do you think that the keeping of llamas such as these is the work of a simple-minded man? Then he added with a twinkle in his kind old eyes, or of idle men? Come, the year grows late. The llamas must be sheared. Finally, shearing was complete. The fleece was sorted as to color, texture, and length of hair, and piled loosely in bundles for storing. Some of it they would trade. Some of it they would spin into yarn to be woven into caps and ponchos, blankets, and squares for bundle wrapping. Some of it, although Kusi did not realize it, would be mysteriously spirited away. To whom? By whose orders? All the answers to these questions were blanketed in mystery. Kusi had done his work well, and Chuto showed his pride in him. What did you do last year and all the years when I was too young to help you? Kusi wanted to know. Chuto replied, Your mind is like a startled deer drinking at a mountain pool. You jump and leap and bound and splash the water. Do you not know that to quench a thirst, drink must be taken slowly and with satisfaction? And not muddy the water, Kusi chuckled. Chuto answered with serious concern, There is grave danger of that, Kusi. In the days that followed, Kusi often thought of what Chuto had said. The boy knew that his mind was thirsty. He knew, too, that muddied water is unfit to drink. Meanwhile, he watched the family in the valley below. Chuto watched them also. They worked and rested and worked, and did not seem to know that an old man and a young boy watched them every day. After they had rested from their weeks of shearing, Chuto said it was time to train Misty as a burden bearer. This was Misty's 4th year. It was time he learned to serve his master, not just to play with him. Long ago, when Chuto had given Misty to Kusi, he had explained that all of Yellow Ear's black or silver babies were to belong to the boy. Misty had been the first black one. But now there was another black baby, almost old enough to be turned into the flock outside the stone corral. Yellow Ears had never given the flock a silver llama baby, but Kusi knew that someday she would. A silver llama is a wonderful thing to own. It brings health and luck and peace and happiness to its master. There was a silver llama in the flock now, stately and proud and respected by the other llamas. It did not belong to Kusi. It knew Kusi only as the shepherd boy who tended the flock. But Kusi did not care. Someday he would own a silver llama, and meanwhile he had the little new black one, and the older, larger, proud, beautiful black one that was Misty. Misty was Kusi's companion and had been since the day he had been driven out of his mother's corral. He loved the boy and understood him. Now Kusi began to train him as a burden bearer. Chuto instructed the boy in making a loosely woven net bag of rawhide thongs. Then Kusi plaited rope of llama yarn. Everything that Misty needed must belong to Misty and not to any other llama. And it must be made by Misty's master. Kusi bunched the matted, coarse hair on Misty's back to make a padding for the burden. Then he said softly, "Come, Llama, come, Llama, I will load you." Kusi thought he knew all about llamas and all about Misty. He had something new to learn. Misty was just like other llamas. He would not be loaded alone. No, senor, he would not have it. Finally, Kusi herded 7 other llamas with him, gently and by soft words, so as not to rouse their dispositions. Misty liked this. He stood quietly in the circle with the others. He turned his head inward when they did and waited for the net bag to be tied to his back with the new soft llama rope. Then trouble started. Kusi knew that no llama would allow himself to be overloaded. But the other llamas were old and knew better. How was Misty to know what was a load and what was not a load? Kusi put more frozen potatoes in the pack to see what would happen. Misty sat down. The other llamas sat down. They turned their heads to look at Kusi with surprise and disapproval. Kusi's feelings were hurt. He had not believed that Misty would do that to him. He coaxed the proud black llama. He begged him to get up. He flattered him. Then Kusi spoke sternly. He asked Misty if he did not remember their years of being together, and he told the llama that he loved him, but that he, Kusi, was the master. Then Kusi stepped back, waiting for Misty's answer. He had not long to wait. Misty's answer was immediate and emphatic. He spat. Kusi sadly took the extra weight from Misty's back. Misty got up, and the other 7 also rose to their feet. They became gentle and patient again. Misty shook his tasseled ears in llama laughter. Kusi said nothing. He looked quickly to see if Chudo was watching him. Chudo was. Even Sunka was watching, crouched by a sharp rock, his head on his paws. That dog, he is so busy watching me have trouble, he has forgotten to whine, Kusi said fiercely to himself. He was irritated and cross. He turned to Chudo to say something, anything that would put an end to the quiet watching. His words were stopped before he spoke them. They were stopped by a long, low call. It came from the foot trail that led to the swinging bridge. Llamas and dog and boy and man looked up, startled and disbelieving. The call came again, long and low and musical. Tensely, silently, they waited. The call came a third time, and with it, walking into view, came a tall, powerful, kingly figure. The man was Indian, strong and fierce, and proud and beautiful. His hair was shoulder length, as glossy and shining black as a raven's wing. Round his head, he wore a turban with a yellow fringe, and his ears... Kusi could not believe what he saw. In his ears were golden earplugs, like the ones the boy wore, but these were so large and so heavy, they made the man's earlobes hang down halfway to his shoulders. At once Kusi sensed that this was no ordinary man. This man was of royal blood. He walked with the walk of kings. Kusi turned to see how Chudo would welcome this noble stranger to their highland home. The old man was standing straight and firm, and Kusi was struck by the similarity of their appearance. Chudo was no shepherd of the back country to bow and cringe before a lordly guest. He stepped forward now to greet his visitor. "I am Amauta, the wise one, the teacher," the stranger said, and his voice was like his call, low and long-sounding and full of music. Chudo answered him, and his voice also had taken on new melody. "I know," he said, "but it is not time that you come. He is too young. He is too young." "He is old beyond his years," the stranger told him. "It is ordered." Chudo bowed his head. "It is ordered," he said with dignity and acceptance. Turning to Kusi, he placed his hand on the young boy's shoulders. "I cannot stay time or alter the pattern of the ancients. My Kusi, this is Amauta, who has come to train you in the things that you should know. Your mind is in his keeping. Your acts obey only the voice of your own heart's whisper." Chudo turned and walked across the ichu grass. Kusi looked into the deep, grave eyes of the stranger who had come to teach him. The boy felt neither fear nor excitement. All this had happened before. It must have happened because it was what he had been waiting for. And he was ready.